Hello and welcome to Avasant's Digital Forum, Reality Check, How to Reshape Your IT Organization, a CIO Perspective. This event is presented in partnership with TBM Council. We are incredibly thankful to have TBM Council as a partner for this event. We're thrilled they have joined us as a co-host to highlight these fantastic thought leaders. We thank you again for your partnership. It is now my pleasure to introduce you to today's moderator, Naresh Lachmandas. Naresh is the former CIO of General Atomics, L3 Communications, and City of San Diego. He is currently a principal and senior fellow at Avasant. Naresh, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Andrea. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today as we dig into the mindset of CIOs as how they are adapting to dynamically changing conditions and looking to reshape their IT organizations. The COVID crisis has posed unprecedented challenges across every industry. IT organizations have to address a trifecta of disruptive forces: business disruption, a distributed workforce, and financial uncertainty. IT executives need to shape their organization aligned with the realities of the post-COVID world. So our discussion today will be focusing on accelerating digital transformation, leveraging automation to support IT and business value streams, and realigning the IT operating model to achieve cost efficiencies and agility. We have a distinguished set of panelists who are going to share some insights. Next slide, please. Tony Costa, CIO at Bumblebee, Steve Philpott, CIO at Western Digital, Henry Guapo, partner at Avasant, and Larry Godek, who's chair of the TBM Council. So, as Andrea mentioned, we're partnering with the TBM Council. The TBM Council enables networking for technology business leaders, and I'm going to ask Larry to share some insights. Larry, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Naresh, and welcome everyone. Very pleased to be here and share a little bit about the Technology Business Management Council. So if we go to the next slide. So hopefully a lot of you know what Technology Business Management is. It's a framework for helping CIOs run their organization like a business. And I really like this definition that TBM provides technology leaders with standards, validated best practices to communicate the cost, the quality, and the value of IT investments to their business partners. And the key there, to the business partners in their language. So there's currently over $1.1 trillion that are of IO or CIO budgets that are using TBM. So most of the Fortune 500, Global 1000 corporations use TBM to manage IT like a business. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. One more. Perfect. So right now there are over 11,000 worldwide members in the TBM Council, and the TBM Council is a nonprofit. So if you're not a member, I encourage you to go to tbmcouncil.org and sign up, and you'll get a lot of information, education, and opportunities to collaborate. That spans over 4,000 at this point, unique organizations, 5 horizontal outcomes that you'll see there that analyze and optimize and plan, optimize and reinvest, giving levers to your business leaders that they can pull to manage their cost, their IT spend, new investments in agile and projects, and cloud and hybrid. So it's a global spread. There's 9 verticals, and these verticals all have standard formats and taxonomy and templates that you can use for free out of the box to get started and get information going. So they include public sector, banking, manufacturing, insurance, healthcare, higher ed, oil, gas, retail, and consumer products. And then on the right side of the slide, the TBM Council really focuses on 3 things: education and certification. There's a book about TBM that was written by the council. I encourage you to get it on Amazon and take a look at it. Standards and research, and collaboration and community. So the next slide, you can see the growth. We started in 2012 when we created the TBM Council. There was just a handful of corporations, including Cisco, HP, we have Amazon, Microsoft, were all kind of the key leaders of starting this. And as you can see, we've grown to over 11,000, with the goal being 14,500 by the end of the year of members. So the next slide is just a quick snapshot of the current board for the TBM Council. You can see a lot of corporations that you're going to recognize by their CIOs and by their logos. And the nice thing is it continues to grow. We actually just added 6 new board members because out of the TBM conference last year in November, there was such a great interest in joining the board. We actually had over 20 people, 20 CIOs and CTOs that were interested. So we added 6 new members and actually created an executive advisory board in the US and Europe to help drive information standards to the board and help the board members. So the next slide, wanted to just make everybody aware that the TBM Council is now kicking off to help collaboration and to spread technology business management, these TBM Tuesdays. So every second and fourth Tuesday of the month, there'll be these events, these webinars, and one's coming up next week with Sheila Anderson, the CIO of Liberty Mutual, Jeff Blomker with Maryville Consulting, on how to leverage a partnership between IT and finance, obviously a hot topic. And then you can see in July and August, September, and October, we've already got several key CIOs and large corporations presenting information pertinent to, I think, everybody on this phone call. So again, I just encourage you to go to the tbmcouncil.org. You'll have more information about all of these webinars that you can sign up for. Please, please, please join the council. Again, it's a nonprofit, it's free. There's a lot of great information, and you can always reach out to me if you're interested in how your organization can leverage technology business management. You can do that via LinkedIn or my email, lwgodak@gmail.com. And Naresh, with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Larry. So coming back to the forum here. So the crisis that we talk about has posed unprecedented challenges across the industry. The stability of our ecosystem that we all trusted is out the door. That 3 to 5 year IT mid-range plan, poof, it's gone. The 2020 operating model initiatives all sidelined. What we do as senior IT executives need to do is to reshape their organizations and operating models to align with to where we're headed. We'll call the new normal. Again, I'm not sure what's, if anything, is normal anymore. So first of all, let's talk about financials. All the projects and budgets are under pressure. They're on hold, they can realign. Also the OPEX and CAPEX spend as well. Secondly, prior to the crisis, those organizations that were already on their journey of transforming and expanding their digital footprint and business ops and infrastructure, they seem to be doing a lot better. And since they already had data in the cloud, and many had set up the line to work from home with cybersecurity controls in place. So again, organizations that realize that digital transformation is no longer a nice to have, it's a must have. Those internal roadblocks seem to have instantaneously been squashed by this crisis. So bottom line, how do we accelerate the process of digital transformation? Lastly, on the people side, what are the implications to the digital workforce? As we drive to more automation and process streamlining to make organizations more nimble and agile and responsive to market shifts, we have to drive things more digitally, more autonomous, have agility. It has implications to the people. How the company is going to leverage automation within IT and within the business and become more agile. With that in mind, let me switch over to our panelists. Tony, we have Tony Costa, we talked about Steve Philpott and Henry. So for the folks, for the audience here, we will have a 50-minute Q&A session at the end, and we're excited to have the audience submit their questions using the chat and the Q&A options. And by the way, the digital forum is being recorded and will be made available online. So Henry, I'd like to turn this over to you to introduce yourself and provide some insights and trends as to what you're seeing in the marketplace.
Thank you, Naresh, and good morning to all of our viewers and to our fellow panelists here this morning. And really what I would like to do today is talk to you a little bit about the new normal. Again, like Naresh mentioned, not really quite sure what that will be, but In terms of operating models, clearly the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted all societies, industries, and businesses globally like nothing else anyone on this call has ever seen. From a business standpoint, it's touched every aspect: customer needs, customer interactions, supply chains, and ways of working. Almost all value streams and the systems supporting core business functions have had to adjust simultaneously in an instant. I mean, that's a pretty tremendous circumstance if you think about it. All those things having to change simultaneously. So when I was asked to consider, what IT organizations need to do for the post-COVID world, I thought of a few key points that came to mind. And that was based on working with clients over the last 3 months, and then speaking with my Avasant consulting and research colleagues. This is what really I came to conclusion on. The post-COVID world generally equals the pre-COVID world if you're operating in a truly integrated digital operating model, but in an accelerated manner. If you're not, the post-COVID world really means it's time to take the steps to get there. Why? Why would I say this? Well, it's pretty simple. Organizations that are already there experience far better outcomes with their response to the COVID-19 pandemic. If you think about it, the pandemic was the perfect test case. Rapidly changing customer needs, rapid shifts in technology usage, and uncertainty, cost pressures, you name it, the pandemic threw it at us. All of the key frameworks and technologies associated with the integrated digital operating model are fundamentally better suited for everything the pandemic threw at us. So to get started, let's go to the next slide. To provide a little context, I thought I'd start with a little overview of the role that IT has played in the enterprise. For many of us, this will be a bit of a road down memory lane as we take the journey from tech support to an integrated business value driver. So role number one, IT is essentially seen as tech support. Minimal or just essential collaboration with the business, between the business and IT, kind of behind the scenes, waterfall delivery approach. IT collects requirements, goes away for a while, and comes back, hopefully within budget, on time, and with something the business actually requested. So that's role number one. Role number two, IT acts as the bridge between business and technology. Business and IT work harder at getting aligned. They're more focused on IT strategy to support the business, but also there's a heavy focus on managing business demand through very standardized and structured approaches, and they're delivered at scale. But this tends to result in pretty siloed approaches, but with significant cost savings achieved. And many of us played in that space for over 20 years now. The third role is the orchestrator at multiple speeds. At this stage, the organization recognizes the strategic importance of digital transformation. The focus shifts from speed and flexibility, and IT uses agile approaches and principles and operates at multiple speeds, typically the difference being between front-end systems and back-end systems. But there's conflicts. The stability, predictability, and standardization from mode 2 or role 2 directly conflicts with speed and flexibility needed for digital transformation. So now we get to role number 4, the role we want to focus on today, where IT is a strategic, integrated part of the business. This is where holistic end-to-end digital transformation occurs. So let's look at some of the characteristics a little more closely for role number 4. Now, what are the key features of an integrated digital operating model? And just to kind of sum up, there's really no one-size-fits-all operating model. The specifics of a model will depend on the type of business and key differentiators that you have. But I wanted to keep this simple by kind of boiling it down to 4 key elements that I think will withstand the test of time. The first one is business leadership. The enterprise views technology as the backbone and IT as a key driver of the overall business strategy. It's not just supporting or aligned to the business, but actually driving the strategy alongside the business. Value-driven. It's an active force in solving business problems, and success is measured by the value that is achieved. This requires new ways of organizing and measuring success based on outcomes versus measuring through traditional silo and functional metrics. Next, collaboration and data-driven. It connects the enterprise and looks ahead based on real-time data and analytics. The model thrives on data and fully exploits available tools to connect processes and to predict behavior, which I think is really the key when it comes to data and analytics. And finally, speed and agility. It operates at market speed and can be as innovative as the technologies that now permeate the enterprise. Organization, process, tools, and technology are all oriented to maximize speed and to drive innovation. Now, looking at a little more detail on the next slide, what I did here was really wanted to lay out what do stage 4 organizations do to operate in this manner and to support the 4 key elements I just described. What I did was I listed out here a number of the hows, but given the limited time we have, I'm going to pick out some of the key ones that contributed the most to the positive COVID response and those outcomes. We could literally talk for an hour and have a webinar on each one of these items, but as I mentioned, I'm only going to cover the ones that I thought most contributed to that positive response that I've seen within our clients. The first one is working with and among business units. This, along with the first one listed here, is a fundamental mindset and cultural change when you move from stage 3 to stage 4. When we look at the COVID-19 response, organizations already operating this way had the relationships in place, capabilities known, and credibility established to solve oncoming challenges swiftly. The second one, they deliver omni-channel experiences through product-focused value streams. Now, focus on customer experiences is nothing new. It's been around for many years. But the product value stream framework really gets pushed into high gear when delivered through integrated business and IT teams. And that works across both the front end and the back end of IT. Again, rapid and effective response to customer and channel impacts from COVID benefited from having these teams in place. Next, breaking down remaining silos across the enterprise. Working as integrated teams means all the remaining business and IT silos need to be broken down. This typically requires a shift from individual to team-based performance metrics to help drive that breakdown. The next one, moving towards more of the technology, is the ability to enable virtual communication and collaboration across the enterprise. Simply put, fully integrated teams need capabilities here. because they can't always be co-located. Organizations already operate in this mode have the framework, technology, and ability to replicate this across the enterprise during the COVID response. Treat real-time data as a business asset. I'm sure everyone on the call here understands and believes that real-time data analytics is key. During the COVID response, the ability to predict human behavior as well as technical behavior allowed these organizations to adjust their response tactics and to adjust their assumptions in a very fluid event.
Henry, you have 30 seconds.
All righty. So final one, technology, you know, that one's a no-brainer. Without the technologies of cloud, microservices, and continuous delivery tools, we really wouldn't be here talking. But these were also key contributors to a positive COVID response. Finally, we wanted to touch on a little bit about some data we've received from our research group around spending patterns during the COVID response and after. In talking with, we recently conducted a survey on IT spend through our research group. And 57% of those organizations we surveyed were increasing their spend pre-COVID. Going forward, about 33% will be cutting their project budgets in digital transformation. However, they're likely to pick up again as we look forward over the next 6 to 9 months. And eventually, that spend will have to increase, and again, in order to reach that new normal in accelerated gains and getting to that phase 4 type of operating model I talked about. So Naresh, back to you. I had to kind of rush through that, but I think the key is the patterns we're seeing is that over the next 6 to 9 months, organizations, again, adjusting to the changing assumptions and fluidity of the situation, will likely decrease their spending in IT transformation and digital transformation, but it will pick up again and will be accelerated as you look over the next year.
Thank you, Henry. Thank you very much. I have a quick question and look for a quick response from you. So you noted that cuts to outsourcing budgets. How do we see this reduction in spend will be achieved?
Yeah, so we have noted here that 25% of respondents indicated that their outsourcing budgets will be cut 10 to 25%.
Okay.
But because clients tend to want to stay with their incumbents right now due to the level of disruption that might take to change, those cuts are likely to be provided not through rate cuts, but by pushing more automation and adjustments in the operating models. And what we also understand is that a lot of that savings will probably be reinvested into digital transformation projects and transformation.
Excellent. Henry, thank you. Appreciate the insights and what the trends that are out there in the industry. By the way, for our audience, again, if you have any questions for the panelists, please use the Q&A and chat session. Steve, Philpott, good morning. Welcome again.
Hey, Naresh, how you doing?
Doing well, thank you. Doing well, thank you. Steve, why don't you take a few minutes and introduce yourself and give us some insights into Western Digital and what some of the challenges you and your IT organization has had to overcome dealing with this crisis.
Yeah, no, that'd be great, Naresh. Thanks. So my name is Steve Philpott. I'm the CIO for Western Digital. I oversee 2 groups. One group I oversee is the IT group. I also oversee the Digital Analytics Office. The Digital Analytics Office is a team of data scientists, data engineers, and software developers, and we build some of those advanced analytic applications to help kind of optimize the environment. So I kind of wear 2 hats in the company. Western Digital is the integration of 3 Fortune 500 companies: Western Digital, HGST, which was the original IBM, and SanDisk. And so for the last 4 years, we've been on this transformation journey. And Jessica, you can stay on the first slide. That's fine. So we've been on this transformation journey for the last 4 years. Western Digital is the largest storage and data infrastructure company. In fact, we're the only true end-to-end provider of storage. So we can provide from the cloud hyperscales, all the way down to laptops, et cetera. Roughly the easiest way to think about it is about half the world's data is running on one of our devices. So that's just kind of a little background on Western Digital. I really liked Henry's comment, kind of post-COVID equals pre-COVID if you were digital integrated model. So for companies that had a lot of those capabilities built in, there wasn't necessarily a new normal, or the new normal wasn't as dramatic a change as what they had before. And that is different for everyone because everybody is on the different part of that journey. What's interesting about the pandemic is, and Henry touched on this also, is it tested our business continuity programs. And it just, normally when we do a business continuity test, we test like certain parts of it one at a time. COVID tested everything at the exact same time. So it really, really put pressure and strain on our organizations and environments. But it also, that stress test also allowed us to take a look at, what are the things that are truly scalable? What are the things that are going to allow us to grow and be agile going forward? So that stress test has actually proven out some things correctly and given us direction in other areas. I thought I'd do a little bit of a change up because Henry's comments were so spot on that I wanted to kind of touch on a couple of his things as it applies to Western Digital. Because again, they were really, really spot on. So if you take a look at some of he had 4 key features. So if you take a look at his first one, which was around kind of business leadership, you have to be in that position where you enable IT to be viewed as a partner and driver with the others on the overall strategy. And for us, we created an office of the CIO. We have IT business partners that work with the various groups. But another key part of that is communication and collaboration. And I have a dedicated communication person. I have one person on my team. Her sole job is communicating IT value to the rest of the organization. It is, that important. The second thing he talked about is around value-driven, is measuring success through value. And this is where Larry's comments in the TBM are really, really key. You have to know your budget. You have to be able to articulate and show value because that's the language that the rest of the company understands. So that ability to communicate your costs, your quality, and the value of IT is important. We internally have tools. Our cost by service model allows us to do similar things. But again, tools like TBM are really, really critical. The other thing around value is, and I'll give you an example. In the digital analytics office that I talked about, we do machine learning algorithms and AI, et cetera. In many cases, it's not as difficult to develop machine learning algorithms. There's lots of tools out there, AutoML, et cetera, that will automatically build algorithms for you. Where the difficulty is getting those algorithms into production and then getting them at scale, which gives you value. And we've seen that time and time again where people will develop algorithms, but they don't necessarily know how to get it into production at scale and show value. And that's where we created rapid learning cycles, rapid production cycles, and rapid scaling cycles. The third thing Henry talked about was collaboration and data-driven. You have to enable your collaboration and communication tools, and his point was, you need to treat real-time data as an asset. We have it in our company, we call it always on data. That's our real-time data warehouse, and that's what we're building up to get that real-time data because it is a business asset. And the last thing he talked about, number 4, on kind of those key features, were around kind of speed and agility. And I think the two things that I would mention in this particular area are, one, his comment about right-sized and right-focused governance. There isn't a one-size-fits-all. You have to have that adjustment. The governance I have for an ERP project is not the governance I have for some of my CI/CD development type of work. You've got to have that flexibility. And 2, this concept of modular scalable services. I believe he was talking about microservices. It's the concept of microservices, setting things up as containers. We enable self-service, and we use things like platform as a service, data science as a service. But you need to set these up as modular, scalable pieces that can allow the company to be more agile. So again, I spent a little bit of extra time on that just because it was so valuable. Okay, next slide. On automation, and so this is one of the areas that I figured I'd talk a little bit about because it is so important. We proved it out in this COVID incident where the value of automation. These are some of the areas that we focus. Robotic process automation, RPA, automation anywhere, UiPath, Blue Prism, tools like that to automate repetitive business processes. Business process management, tools like Pega to work at business workflow automation. Engineering high-performance workloads, these are workloads to do simulations on our engineering side. We run some of the world's largest engineering simulations to the tune of 1 million cores, again, to improve our products and to give us more agility. DevOps automation is around the CI/CD, the continuous integration, continuous development. Our big data platform runs, it probably consumes about 100 trillion data points a day. We have thousands of users there, but yet we can push 3 to 5 updates a day in there through fully automated process. And then chatbots. An example of a chatbot for us is we use MoveWorks, which is a chatbot for our service desk, which automatically resolves user tickets without ever touching a service desk personnel. So again, these are just some examples of automation where automation can really accelerate that value proposition and help drive transformation. Next page, Jessica. So one big example of automation, and this touches automation and ML and a couple other areas, is in one of our factories, we have this concept of a digital twin. So the factory is what we call a lights out factory. There's virtually nobody in there, and it's run by robots. But what the digital twin does is it allows us to make a virtual image of a physical warehouse, and then we can optimize how those robots move. The thought process is this expensive capital test equipment, you never want it waiting for a robot. You always want the robot waiting for the expensive test equipment. And we use machine learning and AI within this digital twin to optimize the movements of those robots. And we've seen about a 25+% improvement in the efficiency of the robots since we did the digital twin initiative. And now that success at that one factory, we're now looking at moving that out to other factories. So again, those are just kind of a couple examples of automation, because in this type of environment, automation is really, really critical. But I'd leave you kind of with a couple parting comments. This event is accelerating all the secular trends that were in flight. Digital transformations were in flight, automations were in flight. This is just accelerating things. A CIO friend of mine used an analogy of kind of a Formula One race car, and he said that, you know, on a sunny day, everybody's on the track, and it's really, really hard on a sunny, dry day to pass anybody. But when it's a rainy day, all of a sudden, some of the best opportunities to take the lead and overtake your competition are becoming available. Some of those great opportunities are being created now, and we're going to see a lot of innovation out there. So Naresh, on that, maybe I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. I love the analogy of rainy days. So we could definitely use that in Southern California. So it's really exciting to hear about your fully autonomous factories and the whole remote working. I'll say this, your digital journey really helped your company go through this whole business continuity issue. And the investment you paid, I'm sure it paid a lot of dividends. Investment you made paid a lot of dividends. So quick question, if you were to go back 12 months, what would you have done differently, Steve? Oh.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting question, because we talk about that a little bit. And I mentioned at the beginning that in 2016, we started the integration of the three companies, you know, Western Digital, HGST, and SanDisk. And as part of that integration, we said that we had to be able, when we're integrated, we had to be able to scale things like our communication and collaboration tools. Now, what we joke about is we built the ability to scale because of the need to do acquisitions and to be able to get those new acquisitions onto our tools on day one. We never predicted that we were going to use it for an event like a COVID pandemic, but the same strategy that we used for scaling for acquisitions worked well. So we probably wouldn't do too much differently, at least in our particular case.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Well, I'll like to switch over to Tony, and then we'll come back during the Q&A session and ask you a few more questions. All right, Steve?
Thanks, Naresh.
For your time. And so, Tony, good morning.
Good morning.
Your business, the food industry, it's essential to us all. Can you share how Bumblebee Foods has been impacted with the crisis and the implications to your IT operations?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, Naresh. So this has been an interesting time for our company. Obviously, we're not a high tech like Steve or some of the other companies on the phone here. Being in the food industry, we were significantly impacted by the reshaping of how the consumer was pantry loading, buying food, their buying habits, how they bought what they were buying, from what channels, and so forth. So as we kind of look back over these last couple of months, it's been an interesting journey for us, because we've had to adapt not only some of our internal IT processes, but also support a lot of what the journey that the business is on to continue to provide the high nutrition, great healthy products that we do. So with that, let me just kind of jump into, for those that don't know, Bumblebee Foods is, we are the #1 shelf-stable seafood company in North America. You know us probably mostly for Bumblebee Seafoods, but our sister company up in Canada is Cloverleaf. Other brands you might recognize, Beach Cliff, Snows, and Brunswick. We also have a frozen business that does a lot within the food service called Anova. And so you'll see there we are number 1 or number 2 in almost every category when it comes to shelf stable. And you know, we continue to bring out bold new innovative products as we kind of look at to the future of you know, consumer needs and so forth. So next slide, please. I want to take you down a different journey. You know, everything Steve said and especially the foundation that Henry laid was spot on. So I don't want to repeat a lot of that. Let me give you a little insights to what we do when it comes to innovation. So we did this ocean to table blockchain project about a year ago, and we really, what started off as a global supply chain project morphed into this pretty robust ocean to table blockchain project for us, where we did co-innovation with SAP. But you know, going back to a lot of the previous comments, and I think Steve hit on this too, you develop projects and you implement technologies and you go on these journeys, not for anticipating a COVID kind of transition, but we also kind of come across it as what we feel is important to our customers, our consumers, and our company. These are our core values. So when we look back at this project, you know, and back in the day when you know, there was so much hype around blockchain, but when you find that tangible use case like we did, now when you fast forward to where we're at today, more now than ever, the consumers want to know where their food came from. They want to know it's sustainably sourced, that it's healthy, we're fully transparent and provide that traceability. So this is kind of one example that we use and we talk about. You know, again, going back to what Henry and a lot of the things he talked in his models, the first being business leadership. You know, when we, in a time of a pandemic, in a time of leading the business, whether what phase you're in, I think you've got to have that strong leadership. And the business in these times of needs looks to IT for reassurance, for confidence, for solutions, for, you know, everything and above. So as an active participant of the leadership team, you have to be lockstep with your business on the challenges and what you're trying to provide. Next slide, please. So, you know, I want to leave you with some ideas. When we talk about our business, when we talk about our journey, we talk about the areas of opportunity to transform our business. Now, I'll give you an anecdotal story. The CEO and I were at a GE conference a couple years back, and the person presenting, one of their executives, you know, looked at this crowd of hundreds of people and said, "Do you know who we think our biggest competition is?" And everybody kind of paused, and I think you go to the normal answers, and they said, startup companies. Startup companies scare them because they're more agile, they're more nimble, they can change their culture. You know, they're talking about transforming their company into a 100-year-old startup company. And so when I talk about things like crossroads of complete business transformation, that's what I talk to our business leadership about. And I position it like this. If you're going to go start a $1 billion fish company out of your garage, how would you go about that? Would you hire all these people in these large organizations and have all this overhead and all this structure? Or would you look at it more nimbly and more aggressive on how you want to run your company? So when we take a step back, that's the dialogue that we talk about, is how do we look at this as a business journey versus a technology journey? And I'll say this a million times, that technology is never your barrier. And we've all been taught in IT never to lead with technology. No, don't use acronyms. Don't go and get the shiny new, you know, toy that you want to play with. Lead with business transformation and challenge the business, because we're in a unique position. Because we see all functions across all areas that maybe an accountant doesn't see, or maybe a supply chain person doesn't see. So bringing that leadership and asking them, where do you want to go? I'm jumping to the bottom because I ask, you know, I level set with our company, and it comes down to one easy question. How do you want to run the company? instead of sitting down and trying to create this blueprint and come up with ideas, take a step back. We once did a executive team wanted dashboards. And everybody on this call that's ever sat down with an executive member that wants a dashboard, it kind of goes in a bunch of different ways. But we started with one simple question. What do you do in the first 20 minutes of your day? And that leads to an hour-and-a-half conversation so that you understand their touch points, their challenges, their needs to develop something that's going to be more meaningful. And one last point on this is when we talk about our journey, we don't talk about upgrade or migration. It's bigger than that. I think it's about transformation. I think it's about re-architecting the way that you want to go to market, the way that you want to engage with your customers and so forth. And that final piece there is, I have a saying that you talk about it today, read about it tomorrow. If we weren't going to be the first on blockchain, somebody else would be. And so we thought it was important for us to get out there and provide that level of leadership within our industry. So I'll end there and turn it back to you, Naresh.
Thank you, Tony. You know, Tony just really enforced the message that companies need to start thinking out of the box and start eliminating those barriers that you mentioned, the resistance about, and start leveraging the cloud, not just to store data, but embracing the digital experience. You definitely are the poster child, if I can say that carefully. So one quick question, as we went through this crisis, how did the business adapt to the new work from home model? Was it as seamless in their day-to-day operations? For example, were they able to get access to information, make effective decisions, working remotely?
You know, I'll go back to what, a lot of great comments Steve made. We had positioned our company for business continuity. We had implemented some great new tools around Teams and online collaboration, and we are probably close to 95% of our entire infrastructure runs in the cloud. So and again, it wasn't in preparation for a pandemic, but it was preparation to continue to lead your company. But with that said, we moved our entire company offsite in 2 days because we had made those investments and strategically thought, from a long-term journey, that's kind of where we wanted to be. But to your business point, we did have to make some concessions and changes. And, as you can imagine, our business uniquely positioned, we say it very humbly, to provide this high protein, shelf stable solution for consumers. First and foremost, our focus was providing the highest level of safety for our employees. When we talk about investments in IT, and all of a sudden it's a whole nother level when you start looking at thermal processing and beacon tracing of people and stuff like that. But on the flip side, we condensed some of our SKU offerings to focus on our high volume products so that we can continually provide product to the shelves of the consumers going forward.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you again, Tony, for those
Sure.
insights. So I'd like to switch over to more of a Q&A from the audience. So if all the panelists could just turn on their video and their audio, that'd be great. Steve, you're on mute. And Tony, you went off mute. Okay, wonderful. Larry, are you still there? All right, so Adriana, by the way, we're going to be running some polls as well. So if the audience could respond to those, and this way, before we wrap up, we'll put up there. So Adriana, I'll turn it over to you. Any questions from the audience that you want to bring to the panels?
We do indeed, and I think our first poll just went up, so it'd be great if everyone can share their thoughts. Okay, so our first question, what do you see changing in regard to running IT as a business when it becomes post-pandemic? I see a rush to get digital transformation done by prioritized in partnership with business and leadership. Whoever wants to take a first stab.
I'll chime in. I think one of the, I don't know if benefits is the right word, but the opportunities we have as an IT organization, that it highlighted the importance of having a strong partnership between IT and the business when we came out of went into the pandemic, quite frankly. So I know there's a lot of discussion around pulling back IT budgets and re-optimizing, and from our perspective, we've been very fortunate because it's rejuvenated maybe some of those conversations on areas that we probably need to focus more going forward to, increase IT spend and support the journey.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
say, oh, go ahead, Steve.
No, I was going to actually tee you up, Larry, because it really is, whether it's pre-COVID or post-COVID, it really is about IT showing value, and that's what we need to do. It's not necessarily a digital transformation tool or XYZ tool. We need to be able to show value, and that's, Larry, where TBM Council comes in.
Absolutely, and not just the council, but TBM as a framework. So technology business management, that's what it's all about. And I would echo Tony and Steve, your comments, and just add that if you can get to complete financial cost transparency and show the business leaders exactly what they're getting for their money, you change the dialogue. And you no longer have situations that I had, and I've talked to lots of CIOs that say, CFOs, CEOs, business leaders saying, we're not sure if we're spending the right amount on too much on technology or not enough. And until you can really show them that in their terms, it's very hard to really show value. And, Steve, to your point, once you can do that, you can really start having the conversation and changing the conversation to,
and it is,
what is the strategy?
Yeah, no, you're right, Larry. It's the transparency, and we had in the chat this thread going on, and we use that transparency to it's either direct savings, you're reducing cost, it's cost avoidance, you're avoiding costs in the future, or it's soft costs, which are efficiencies. The most difficult one are the ones where they're in a bucket we call strategic, and sometimes those require kind of quote leaning in a little bit. You're not going to get value, like our big data platform, our big data analytics platform. It took a couple years of investment, but that was made at an executive strategic level. But that transparency helps.
Yeah, and how do you shift those dollars from run the business, keep the lights on projects to those really transformative, going after the customer and strategic initiatives is really critical.
Yeah.
Andrea, back to you.
Thank you. Okay, next question. How do we as IT leaders get our key business users to see digital transformation as more than just an IT initiative?
Yeah, I'll start with that. I think it's really about the leadership that comes from IT. They really have to be in helping democratize IT, really changing the way they think about that, and going out there and really demonstrating to the business that IT is going to help the business strategy overall on the front end. And again, not just be in that kind of role 1, 2, 3 where I talked about, where it's kind of behind the scenes, and IT goes off and does things, but it's really pushing the transformation forward. I think it's just really got to be a change in the mindset.
Yeah, and I would say, what Tony did with blockchain on tracking food to the source, tracking food to the source, that's not an IT thing, that's a business and critical to Bumblebee and consumers of food. The fact that he's leveraged blockchain technology to go solve that problem, that's where IT and the business married up. And I think it's a great example.
Yeah, Larry, that's a great point. I was going to chime in too around when we talk, and someone wanted to ask me, what's the difference between a good and a great CIO? And I came up with this idea of authentic leadership. So when you engage with the business, you've got to have their best interest at heart. You've got to understand how the business operates. You've got to understand what they're asking for and what's it going to lead to. When we talk about projects in our organization, we're looking to either increase revenue, decrease cost, or drive business efficiency. And if it's not doing one of those things, don't work on it, because you're only throwing time and energy and resources away. But for example, that blockchain, they said, we want to have better visibility to our supply chain. Well, I got on a plane and 26 hours later, I'm sitting on the shore of the remote island of Indonesia talking to the fishers because I don't know what, I can't quantify. I need better, visibility to our supply chain unless I see it and feel it and understand it to provide them, that kind of leadership. But back to the point, I really think you've got to come at this from a business perspective. We are all technologists at heart, but I think that has got to be on the back burner to the conversations you have.
Great, thank you. Naresh, how much time do we have left for questions?
We have about 3 more minutes left.
Great, okay, got a good one for everyone. How will talent acquisition change with increased remote working post-COVID? What are the potential benefits for an IT organization with this change?
I can talk a little bit. So a couple things. First of all, IT's actually been one of the leading role models for a remote workforce. So of all the groups in the organization, IT by far had more remote workers, and they were very productive. They were very happy, etc. So I think what happened is that this particular incident has shown the rest of the organization that the remote workforce is a tool. And by tool, I mean, we're not going to be 100% working for remote, and we're not going to be 100% on premise. But if we think 6 years ago, Yahoo and others were saying everybody had to be on premise. So I think what's going to happen is the dial's going to turn, and that's going to give us access to more productive workers, more engaged workers, and happier workers because they're going to be able to work a little more of their schedule and their location.
Yeah, I would add that there's been a culture shift, right, from the business perspective. We've always known that it was efficient. We've done it for years. We log in on the weekends. We do migrations over holidays. We've done this forever, but it was always viewed as a luxury. I'm working from home today because I got the plumber coming or something, and people are like, oh, you're really working, and those kind of things. Now people understand within a week of being remote how efficient and productive the company has become. It opens up those avenues, and we're going to have to, it's going to challenge us, not only as a business, but as an IT organization, because they're going to come to us and say, how do I really know Tony's really being productive at home, right? So now we're going to have to help the business kind of see into that window that everybody's been nebulous in the past about how do we know people are productive? And it puts a lot of responsibility back on the manager. And
CIOs I've talked to, before the COVID issue, they had tried to go remote and ran into HR and legal, roadblocks.
Right.
I don't think that those are going to be there going forward.
Agreed.
There's three. No, you're right, Larry. I think it opened that up. There's three. You have to have the right work. Not all work can be done remotely. You have to have the right person. The person has to know how to work remotely, how to stay engaged, and you have to have the right manager. Managers need to know how to manage a remote. So if you have the right work, the right individual, and the right manager, it works really, really well.
Agreed.
Okay. Thank you for those insights. I'd like to maybe, Jessica, if you pop up the results of the first poll so we can just share that with everybody. So the results is based on the current crisis, looking to the next 12 months, what is the most important issue? It definitely seems to be a significant shift in your enterprise IT operating model. So it's an interesting one. How about the next result, Jessica? Thank you. The next poll. Okay. Where do you see RPA automation strategy going over the next 12 months? Definitely, it seems to be increased use of automation in business process. So interesting results. Thank you again, Jessica. Well, I'd like to, first of all, thank our panelists for their participation and help with this process. I think it was very insightful. I'm hoping the audience got some good insights into it. And so my takeaways, again, honestly, I'd like to go back to a comment that Steve made earlier. Take advantage of the rainy day right now. this is time to think out of the box and drive change. And as you've seen from what Steve and Larry and Tony talked about, is given this environment, if they hadn't taken these steps, the companies that are still struggling are the ones who hadn't started the transition in leveraging the cloud and other capabilities and from a business continuity standpoint. So basically, think out of the box. Let's make that happen. Again, as leaders, as IT leaders, we need to drive that. We need to work with the business, see the value, and of course, provide governance and oversight. So that's my takeaways. Again, to the panelists, Steve, Larry, Tony, and Henry, thank you for insights, and have a wonderful day. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Naresh.
Thank you.
Thank you.